right, and welcome to the final episode of Day 2 of TMF Week, everybody. I'm your host, Molly Thacker. I just want to make sure before we get started that everyone is able to hear me. If you could just drop a quick yes or I can hear you in the chat, that would be great. Anybody? Anybody? Amazing. All right. Thank you so much, guys. So yeah, like I said, this is the final session of Day 2 of TMF Week. I am here with the dynamic duo, Aryn Knight and Matt Lowry. Before we get started, I'm just going to go over some housekeeping rules with you. So our most popular question of the conference: are these sessions being recorded? Yes, they are all being recorded. You can access all of them later on. You'll be able to get to them at the end of the day. All attendees will receive a certificate of attendance. This will not be for each session. It will be something that you get after the conference is over. So we'll send those out to you once TMF Week has wrapped up. You will be able to ask questions throughout the presentation, and hopefully Aryn and Matt will have some time to get to them at the end and maybe give some responses to your questions. And we will also be having a networking break following the presentation. You'll be able to visit the lounge, our virtual booth, chat with some other people, keep the conversation going and continue learning with your peers. I'm also just going to give you a quick overview of the session. So the presentation is going to be about 30 minutes in length, followed by which we'll have a question and answer period of around 15 minutes. And then I'm going to give you a quick overview of what's on the agenda for tomorrow before you are free to go and network and attend the virtual booth. So another quick note, if we don't get to any of your questions, Matt will be around in the lounge after to chat with you, answer any outstanding questions you may have. And so yeah, if you don't get them at the end, don't worry, you can go chat with Matt in the lounge. And Aryn does have a hard stop at the end of the presentation, so she might have to drop off a little early, but no worries, Matt will take the reins. And without further ado, here is Demystifying the TMF versus ISF debate from the site perspective. And Aryn, if you want to share your slides now. And there we go. I will hop off and let you begin your presentation.
Great. Thank you so much. If I can also get you can see my slides and hear me, that would be a fantastic. If you can drop that into the chat real quick as we get started. Oh, the chat is very quiet. So I assume they cannot hear me or see me. Oh, there we go. I've got some. Thank you so much. Well, thank you all so much for being here today. Matt and I are going to discuss demystifying the TMF versus the ISF, the great debate that continues once again. So let me go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Aryn Knight. I am the Associate Vice President of Clinical Research for the Memorial Hermann Health System. I also wear a lot of other hats that I didn't put on this slide just for the sake of time and not to, make myself sound too amazing. But my co-host today is the amazing Matt, and I'll let him introduce himself.
So it would be impossible for Aryn to not come across as amazing because she's completely amazing. And we made the decision before the presentation that our name is now Marin. So you can address us as Marin because we decided that at was a little dumb. But my name is Matt Lowry. I have been in research now for about 16 years. The last 11 of those years, I have been at Suncoast Neuroscience Associates in St. Pete, Florida. I've done a little bit of everything. I've worked on the sponsor side. I've worked on the site side. I specialize in regulatory budgets and contracts. And then in general, just research. My life is research. I absolutely love this industry. Sometimes in spite of how it is, but hey, if you're in research, it's because you love it.
Agreed. And so we will say, if you've ever heard a Marin presentation before, we do like to keep our slides light because we want to get to our Q&A We want to talk about it. We like to have organic conversations. Hopefully we can do that today. That's what we're striving for. But I am just going to go ahead and tell you that we will be keeping our slides quite light, and we do that on purpose. So let's go ahead and deep dive into what we're talking about today. So for all of you that are on this call, I know we're talking about the TMF. That is wonderful. That is fantastic. But my life and Matt's life really revolves around what's called the ISF, the investigator site file, or for those really old school people, I like to call it a reg binder. I'm sure Matt likes to call it lots of things as he's throwing it up against the wall. But we, I'm sorry, I made myself laugh with that one. But this investigator site file, this is a living regulatory file for any active study that we have. And so if we have 15 studies, we have 15 investigator site files running for those in real time, up to date. And the reason is because a site has to maintain that the ISF is always audit ready. This can be difficult because, again, as a site, we have a lot of responsibilities that is happening. And so the investigator site file is something that we do take quite seriously. But we also have to remember that it can be the wild, wild west with an investigator site file, because everyone can do their site file in different ways, different formats. There's no structure here. So we really want to talk about how these two things, the TMF is what you all are here for today, but the ISF, how we can bring these things together.
So why demystify? Where did the title of our presentation come from? Well, for me, the reason why I like to demystify, the ISF versus the TMF, or TMF versus ISF, is so that we have some solutions. And why do we want solutions? Next slide.
Oh, sorry. I lost my slides. I'm sorry, Matt.
No.
There we go.
Because little to nothing has changed from our perspective. There's still no standardized way of structuring or maintaining an ISF. Sponsors and CROs still aren't proactively telling me what's missing from their TMF from my site so I can provide it during the study. There's still no common terminology about what we call what goes into an ISF, or how we name it once it's in there. Aryn and I have presented on this topic for at least 4 years at different TMF conferences, but at the site level, we aren't seeing any changes. And if we are seeing changes, they're not grand enough to present themselves. In fact, the information that we're going to be sharing today is eerily similar to what we presented the very first time in Orlando in January of 2019.
So let's talk about the industry frustrations that are continuing to be ongoing from a site perspective. So at the site level, some challenges that affect the TMF from our side is the lack of transparency. We're going to break all these down in just a minute, so I'm going to go through this list. Lack of transparency, poor communication, or no communication, or little to none communication, or who are we communicating with? Duplication of work, including multiple requests for the same documents. And we have the lack of consistent and or compatible systems that's used between the sponsors and the CROs that are part of these trials.
So lack of transparency. I know what would help me is if I knew what a sponsor expects from me in order for their TMF to be considered healthy. Another thing that I would like to know, how often are they going to monitor our ISF? How often are they going to audit their TMF and then let me know what's missing or what didn't pass a QC, or, for whatever reason. And, looking ahead, which would be wonderful and what would be great, is how is my ISF going to go towards populating the sponsor's TMF? Because for me, when I think about what a CRA does during our IMVs, they're here SDVing, they're documenting, they're source document verifying, which rightly so. So if we have a CRA who is looking at reg, typically they're only looking for very specific documents. They're not getting in any great detail. So then what that translates into is at the closeout visits, or sometimes months after the closeout visit, we get a long list of missing items because no one has really looked at our ISF since startup or site activation.
Yeah, so and that leads to the back, and that leads straight into the next thing, which is our communication. So if you're not looking at our site investigator site file until we're starting it maybe in the middle a little bit somewhere, and then you're closing it, where's the communication around it? Again, as I told you at the beginning, we have to be audit ready at all times. This is a living, breathing thing for us. So there's definitely a lack of communications. So as I mentioned, sometimes we don't even know who we're supposed to be talking to. Are we talking to the monitor when we start up our studies? We're talking to a reg startup person and then they disappear. Then we talk to the monitor, but then the monitor has to go talk to somebody else. So they're like the middleman between things. So, again, what Matt and I are seeing is that these monitors are coming in and what we're calling reg lights. They kind of do some checks here and there. They're being told what to grab. They can't explain to us why they're grabbing this because we've already sent it to them 15 times already. Why are you getting it again? So, who are we supposed to communicate with? Who is our designated TMF person that we should be communicating with? Again, with the CRAs, they're coming in and they have a large list of things to do. They have to check patient safety. They have to look at consenting. They have to look at all of these things. That's why this gets pushed to the side for us. So really, are we communicating to the right person? I don't think that we are communicating to the right person. Matt, what do you think about this?
No, because sometimes if I'm talking to a CRA, again, deer in headlights, they're like, well, I just know I need this document. And I'm like, well, that's fine. I can give it to you. But then if I need any more information or if I have any questions, sometimes I'll even go to a CTM or a project manager or a project leader. And even those people, they're kind of an outside looking in. They know what the TMF is. They have a rough idea of what it does. But they're just like, well, that's something that's, I'm in some way, shape, or form responsible for some of it, but that is actually something that someone else handles. And that's fine. It's just like at the site level, even though I'm the director, there are things that there are other people better suited to talk to. So, if you do have a site that is savvy enough to be asking questions about the ISF because it's going to affect the TMF, send them to those people. If there's a TMF associate or a TMF specialist, let us talk to them or have them get in touch with us so we can speak the same language. And again, I know that not all sites are going to have a dedicated reg person or even a dedicated reg person that might know as much about TMF as some other people do. But when you're lucky enough to have a site that is that savvy, utilize it.
Agreed.
So work duplication, because, we all have plenty of free time to do the same thing, 10, 15, 20 different times. So this is nothing new. I think everyone that I have ever talked to at the sponsor and the CRO level during a TMF conference, they know this. They know this happens. So we deal with multiple requests for documents from multiple sources throughout the trial, especially during and after the closeout visit. My thing is we are expected to be audit ready at all times. I have zero issue with that. My issue comes in, why isn't that happening at other levels in the industry? If you're coming to me 3, 4, 6 months after the closeout visit and telling me, oh, hey, we need this and 50 other things. Well, those 50 things did not pop up at the very end of the study. Some of these things that happen towards the beginning and during the study. So why aren't TMFs being audited, not necessarily in real time, but on a periodic basis And then you go to your site, you say, hey, this is what we need from you, instead of waiting until the closeout visit is done. And again, because I get where maybe some of this comes from. You know, the CRA collects whatever documents that they need, and then it goes back to a central team, or it goes to a TMF specialist or an associate or whoever. You know, some 2, 3, however many sets of hands have touched that document, and it got lost along the way. It got misfiled. I get that. Mistakes happen. We are all human. But what I would really like to see is not waiting until the very end of the study to get stuff that you should have had throughout the study from the very beginning.
Yeah, because as we all know, CRAs turnover. Well, sometimes research teams turn over. And if you have a study that's lasting 5+ years, it's sometimes very difficult to try to, like, where's this? What's that? I don't know. I just inherited the study. The coordinator left. I don't know what's happening. If you can do it in real time when it's happening, or even on a quarterly basis, it would make things so much easier for everyone, for all parties, because we're in this together. We want this to be successful. So let's talk about the lack of consistent or compatible systems. So the systems used vary so much. We have so many systems that we have to use. Every study is completely different. I might be working with one sponsor for one study, I'm using this system, but then I'm working with the sponsor for another study and I'm using this system, and then I'm using that system. It's just a lot of systems. So even if the same system is used, it seems that it's used completely differently sometimes. It's a lot for us to have to go through and learn all of these systems. And then, like, okay, you're kind of not using this system, but for this study, you are using this system. So even if a sponsor or CRO uses the same systems across multiple studies, it seems as though it's used differently between studies, as I mentioned. So the lack of consistency is a root problem here for us. We have to be churning this information or giving you this information, quality information, so that you can do your checks and balances. But we need some help along the way too. And I know that sites are paid for the work. I understand that. We're like a contracted entity to do the research. But you have to understand, if we're producing you bad data, bad quality work, it's going to hurt you in the long run. So you have to look at us. You have to take sites into account when these things come into play, because it would very much help in the long run create a more universal relationship with your sites. Matt, do you have an opinion on this?
Well, of course I do. I'll give credit where credit is due. I am starting to see a little more consistency, and I think that is probably in part because more and more sponsors and CROs are using the TMF reference model. Great strides have been done in the last few years. So, mad snaps to that group for what they have done. I'm huge when it comes to standardization, and I think the whole TMF reference model idea, that just gives me chills. But as far as the lack of consistency in compatible systems, sites are not the primary users of these systems. So if it's causing issues for us, then it's got to be causing issues for sponsors and CROs. And it just blows my mind when you're working with, like, there have been a couple of instances where I'm working with a sponsor and we might be doing 2 or 3 different trials with them. Even within that sponsor, they're using different systems. And sometimes even if they're using the same system, they're using it differently. So I'm like, why? If you expect your site to have SOPs, then why don't you have SOPs? Why don't you have a defined process for how you're going to use your own systems?
Oh, I completely agree. So Matt, you were going to do this one, but let me lead into this one. We're not all about telling you problems. We want to come to you as your partner. and create some solutions.
Yeah, we jumped over a couple of slides. Better communication.
Sorry, there we go.
There we go. So better communication, transparency. Who does what at the sponsor and CRO, and what do you expect from the site and when? Dedicated points of contact. That would be wonderful. You know, if we have a question or if we need something, who do we go to at the sponsor CRO? I know I tell all of my sponsors, I tell all of my CROs, hey, if you ever need anything from this site, you come to me. Even if it's not something that I necessarily handle, I will make sure it gets to the right person. I will make sure that it gets done. Even if it's something that's not related to reg or budget or contract, the buck stops with me. So if there's anything you need, you tell me, I'll make sure it gets handled. And not to beat the dead horse, but please audit your TMFs, see what's missing, tell us what you need. I know I would much rather help you have a complete and timely TMF rather than receiving a long list of documents that close out or months after the closeout visit.
I completely agree with you. So let's talk about better relationships. But that also comes with what we've just said, better communication. Like we want to know what your expectations are. We want to help. We want to reduce the duplications. We want to reduce the multiple requests that's coming from your side. We have to have a better relationship. We have to be looked at as a partner. I just want to keep saying this. We need to be viewed as someone that's at the table with you, not just some contracted entity to do the work. Because anybody that's in clinical research from the site side is there because they really enjoy what they're doing. Matt and I wouldn't be in this industry as long as both of us have been, 20 million years, if we didn't love what we did. But we want to have a better relationship. We want to work more, closer to each other so that we can help to reduce some of the issues that we've already discussed.
So standardization, and it just so happened that I got this slide. This was not by design. So standardization, what I would love to see is that we develop an ISF reference model. So eventually we could have communication between eTMFs and EISFs. I think that TMFs and ISFs are more similar than they are different. But for me, the biggest difference is that the TMF is more mature. It's more established than the ISF. We all know there's the TMF reference model. A lot of sponsors and CROs use it, which results in TMFs having more guidelines and more instructions. It's got a defined structure and formatting and expectations and how you name your files. We would love that at the site level. Like we were saying earlier, at the site level, it's like the wild, wild west. We have no reference model like that. Personally, I've been talking about this for the last couple of years, but I'm just one person. There's not a whole lot that I can do.
Hey, it's not just you. I've been saying it too. Two people.
Two people, yay. We're officially a group. We've been told that there might be the chance that people within the TMF reference model group would be interested in doing this. And if so, I am absolutely on board. Y'all get in touch with me. You let me know what you need. Marin is here reporting for duty. And I think, and again, standardization. I think if we did have an ISF reference model, that would go a long way in the points about standardizing stuff like the file naming conventions and standardizing terminology. When you're talking about an industry like ours that is so heavily regulated, you have to have standardization. That's why we're also big on SOPs and knowing what to do in every possible situation that could come up during this study. Anyone who is just winging it, I don't know how you sleep at night.
Oh, no. That's already giving me anxiety thinking about winging it. Like, That is what sites want. We want standardization. Tell us what we need. Tell us how you want it. Tell us where it needs to go. Tell us these things, and we will comply. We may kick and fight and scream at the beginning, but we will comply to these things. Again, if the outcome for it, we're looking for improved outcomes. That is all we want at the end of the day. Better communications, better relationships, standardizations, getting us all on the same page. ISF reference model that feeds straight into the TMF reference model. Matt and I are ready. We're ready to help everybody get this done to make this, again, a better partnership for the long run for us.
Yeah, and I'll say when it comes to improved outcomes, not only is that something that we all want, but I wholeheartedly believe that if we do improve communication, if we do improve our relationships, if we do put in some processes where standardization is the priority, then you can't help but have better TMF outcomes.
Yeah, it's all going to just work itself out because it seems like it's a lot, but from a site, really the easiest way to start with this is just better communications, telling us where to start. The rest of these things we can continue to work on in the background to move this forward as a collaborative group. But just if you can hear anything from Matt and I today, just have a better communication with us. Tell us what you need. Tell us what you want. Do it as closely in real time as possible, and don't save it to the very end, because that's extremely frustrating for us, because we're trying to close you out and you want to close out, and we don't want to go back to the very beginning. Right,
yeah,
Matt?
And I know for me, I would really like for, and not just anything that's TMF related, but everything in the industry, but because, we're talking about TMF, one of the reasons why I would like for this to be a partnership and to be seen as partners within the industry is so that we can arrive at these solutions together. Sites a lot of times feel like things are thrown at us, or they are just rammed down our throat, and we have no input. We get processes that don't work for us. We get solutions that don't jibe with the way that we do things at a site. So for me, if you involve the sites in whatever new thing you're trying to do, or this problem that you're trying to solve, if you bring in sites, you're going to have the site perspective, which means whatever that thing is that you're developing, it's going to take a big set of conditions into consideration already. And for me, if I know that a site has been involved with the development of this, or a service, or a process, or a new piece of technology, I automatically, I don't want to say that you're going to have my 100% full buy-in, but if you tell sites, hey, this was developed in cahoots with some sites, I will lend a more gracious ear towards it.
I completely agree. So as Matt and I, as you can probably tell, we want to talk about this. We want to come up with solutions. And so this is the point now that we want to now hear your questions and be able to answer those, to talk about what you're seeing, how we can help, and vice versa. So now let's talk. Put your questions into the Q&A, and Matt and I will get to that.
Well, I see one. What are your thoughts on having sites upload documents directly to the sponsor CRO's TMF system?
Well, I've heard that they don't want that.
Well, I'm split down the middle. In a way, I do not want to have not access. I don't want anything I do going directly into the TMF system, because there's a whole other set of processes and procedures, that I don't necessarily know about. But then there's another half of me is that, if you're dealing with someone who knows what they're doing, if we are the ones uploading those documents directly into the TMF, then we know they're there. There's one set of hands that's touched it. We don't have to worry about it going from, the CRA where it sits in their email box for, 2-3 weeks, and then it goes to another person and it sits there for a while, and then it goes to another person and it sits there for a while. Then it's uploaded, and then it has to be QC'd, and next thing you know, it's been 2 months before it actually gets into the TMF. So half of me is like, no. The other half is yes. I guess a good medium, meeting in the middle. If there's a sandbox environment, just off the top of my head, if there's a sandbox environment where we could place it and then someone QCs it before it goes in, before it becomes an official part of the TMF, that sounds like a better idea to me.
I completely agree. The TMF is owned by the sponsor, the CRO, whoever. It's not owned at the site level. And so, us, and I agree with Matt, us feeding straight into the TMF has its pros and it has its cons. But I also don't want to mess your TMF up because I'm not a TMF specialist. So if there is that, housing grounds that we can place it, you QA it, QC it, and then it can go, or you can kick it back to us and say, you know what, this is illegible, this isn't working, we have questions, you didn't sign and date it properly. So if we could have that type of environment where we can upload the documents, you QC it, you can kick it back to us in real time, that's a lot better than sending stuff via email. Just saying.
And something that you said made me think of something that's kind of not related. My site uses eReg. We have been eReg now for 3 years-ish. I don't know, 2.5, 3 years. We still have some sponsors and CROs that say, well, we want this on paper. I'm like, but I'm going to take that, sign it with a pen, scan it, create a PDF, and email that to you. I just refuse. I said, no, I have eReg. It is Part 11 compliant. Been using it. We get rave reviews from sponsors, CROs, and CRAs. Our CRAs love it. It's intuitive. It's easy to use. So no. So one of the things that, one of the ideas that I keep throwing out there to CRAs, or even at the very beginning of a study when I'm talking to the reg specialist, when we're sent those questionnaires and site contact form, make a fillable PDF version. Sure, a Word document, I can make it work. But if you're going to take the time to create a Word document, then take the time to make a PDF version that is fillable. Because what I'm going to do, I'm going to take it, I'm going to put in information, I'm going to upload it to my eReg, I'm going to issue it for e-signature, whether that's for me, whether it's for the PI, whether it's for whoever, and there, it's done. You don't have to worry about legibility. You don't have to worry about compatibility. It's done. So that's one of my tangents. That's one of the things that I have been saying for at least the last year and a half. Fillable PDFs, please.
Yeah. And this is actually, this little tangent you just went on is actually really good for what Christy's question just is. It says, I know you stated using lots of systems is difficult. Are you able to use one system where you're able to provide the monitor access to documents for that study so they can obtain what they need for the TMF, or what is missing? And Matt answered that. Yes, we totally can. But the thing is that we have to have your buy-in to use said system that we are already implementing. As Matt said about his eReg system, I've seen the same thing with when I was at the site. I had the same thing with my eReg system. No one wanted to use it from the sponsor side, the CRO, the monitor side. They didn't want to use it. They wanted us to still continue to do it old school way. And so, yes, it was a fantastic way for us to streamline these things and have it in one place, but we have to have the buy-in of it as well for it to be successful.
Yeah. I definitely saw some not hard pushback, I will say that, but I've seen, and I continue to see every so often, pushback from sponsors and CROs. And I'm like, well, I don't understand. I know that you have an eTMF, so why do you want us to continue using paper?
Right. Exactly.
I think the biggest concern has been, is your eReg system Part 11 compliant? Yes, it is.
Yes, because I can guarantee you there's no eReg system coming out that's not Part 11 compliant, because we asked that question. when we're looking at these systems, I can guarantee you that's probably one of the first questions that we ask when we're looking at these systems. So let me ask you this question. What strategies are we trying to implement that are working to bridge some of the gaps we've shared for us to all be on the same collaborative page?
Well, I know for me, it's communication from the very, very beginning. When I first start talking to the reg specialist or whoever I'm going to be working with when it comes to the initial reg packet, I'm telling them about the system. I'm telling them what our processes are. I'm telling them, hey, if you need anything, I'm your direct line of contact. For me, until we have systems that are that communicate, until our systems are communicating electronically, then the best way to avoid that or to try to nip that problem in the bud is communicating the good old fashioned way. And that's picking up a phone. Well, now the good old fashioned way is email, but either way.
Yeah. So this actually is a really good question. And this is the last question I'm going to be able to answer with you, Matt. And then I have to jump. I'm so sorry.
Absolutely.
But it says, TMF requests for docs that have been duplicated numerous times. How do you still get the documents in the TMF when the site is frustrated and refuses to provide the docs that have been collected numerous times? This is a really good question. I love the please see attached. I love that one. I will use that all day long and then attach it every single time. But you know what? You know what I got that made me like super excited? Right before I left my site last year and moved over to my current position, I had a monitor say, we're about to ask you for a lot of documents you've already provided us to the past. I'm going to suggest that you tell them to increase your budget to provide this additional oversight and requesting of documents. And I was like, oh, monitor, I love you. Thank you for confirming what we need to do. You want this again? Maybe you should pay us because now we have to send it to you again.
Yeah.
Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. You're even more gracious than I am because I'm one of those sites that say no. Once I've given it to you a couple of times, then I'm like, you know what? It's no longer my problem. That is an internal problem and it is not internal to my site. I have even went so far, and yeah, I guess you could call this petty. I have even went so far as to say, I sent that to this person on this date at this time. I understand that they're no longer with your company, but I'm assuming that someone has access to their emails unless they completely deleted their email account. So y'all go find it. Because you're not paying me to do it.
I agree. I think again, if you continue to request and request and request, we have every right to be frustrated. We have every right to tell you no. That again comes back to some of the solutions and things we've already been talking about. But money is a big factor. You probably should take some ownership of this and be like, well, why don't we have this documents? Because I know they probably sent to us. So why don't we? So we should go ahead and proactively say, listen, we're requesting these documents for your time. We're going to give you X amount of money for the work that we're asking you to do again. Just be proactive about it. Okay, yeah. Matt, I have to jump. I love you. Thank you all so much. There's another question in the chat. Matt, I'll let you take it.
I'll take it.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Yeah, so to add on to what Aryn was saying, a few years ago, I started adding what I call a post-closeout visit request line item in all of my budgets. It's accepted about 50% of the time. I do think it's getting accepted a little bit more, but basically what that boils down to is after the closeout visit, if you need anything from me, I'm going to charge you for it. And if we don't already have an agreement as to how much it's going to cost, then we have to make an amendment to the budget. Some sponsors, when I talk to them about this, they think it's the greatest thing ever. They're like, oh, that's such a great idea because now, because a lot of times when we need those documents, it's because we're getting ready to go to the FDA and we don't have time to wait, Some other sponsors, well, that doesn't apply to us. I'm like, well, is there a closeout visit? Well, yeah. Okay, well, is it possible that in the realm of possibility that you might need a document after the closeout visit? Yeah. Okay. Well, then tell me again how this doesn't apply in that situation. And if you ever see it, one of the things that I always tell sponsors is I'm not just going to send you a bill for something. It's a conditional invoiceable. I'm only going to be able to invoice if you get in touch with me. And chances are the only time you're going to get in touch with me is when you need something because you're getting ready to go to the FDA. So how do you recommend managing e-cigs from one system and then uploading to another system? We're seeing documents that are coming out of ISFs that have an additional page attached that's related to the system it comes from. Should this page be uploaded to the eTMF? I know in my eReg system, there is one page at the very end, that's the audit trail. It tells who requested the signature, when they signed, the time and date of when everyone who signed. It has their IP address, has the name of the system. So I would have to say that, yes, you would want that page to stay intact and be uploaded to the eTMF system, because that shows that the system that generated it was Part 11 compliant. And it also shows that an e-signature is valid.
All right. Thank you so much for answering all those questions, Matt. It was very informative. I feel like I learned a lot, and thank you so much for such a great session. If anyone has any more questions for Matt, as we mentioned, he will be in the lounge afterwards if you want to pick his brain about anything. And just to wrap up the session here, so just a quick overview of day 3 of TMF week tomorrow. We're going to be going over the future of the TMF reference model, getting your TMF to work for you, how we can improve TMF culture, some sponsor oversight, TMF index, risk-based validation. We've got a ton of cool subjects lined up for tomorrow, so I hope to see you all there. And now, as I mentioned, you're free to go and network, chat with some of your other TMF week attendees, and maybe keep the learning going, keep chatting with people. You can head to the lounge or the booth. Plenty of places to chill and have a good time and just talk to your peers. And my final ask for you is, if you could please, if you haven't already, if you could please go and fill out the TMF Pulse Check survey. Enters you to win this super cool pair of custom iHeart TMF Converse shoes. We've had a lot of participation so far. It's been great, but we really want to hear from everybody. We want to hear your opinions. It's super quick. It takes 6 minutes. So I would love if you could please fill out the survey. And yeah, that would be everything for us today. Thank you so much again for the presentation, Matt. It was incredible. Aryn and Absentia, you as well. Thank you so much. And yeah, have a great day, everybody.